Welcome to a special edition of the Scottish Rite Journal podcast, an audio presentation of the Scottish Rite Journal, brought to you by the Supreme Council of the Scottish Rite, Southern Jurisdiction, Mother Supreme Council of the World. This week's article is from the pages of Amicus Illuminismi, the Patriarchs, Joseph Fort Newton and the Contemplation of Wisdom in a New Age by Brother Andrew Hammer, 32nd Degree, KCCH, and read by Brother Hank Griffin, 32nd Degree, and comes from the September-October 2023 issue of the Scottish Rite Journal.
Living as he did at the end of one monumental century and at the beginning of another, Joseph Fort Newton, 1880 to 1950, has much to teach us today as we settle into our own century. Newton's most prominent work, The Builders, A Story and Study of Masonry, was published in 1914, that fateful first year of World War I, whose impact would not be felt directly in America for a few years, but which marked the true end of one era and the beginning of another. Much has been said in recent years about generational issues in relation to Masonry, as Masons try to understand membership numbers in terms of generational appeal or the supposed lack thereof. Yet what Newton first puts forth in his remarks is that every stage of life has its advantages and disadvantages. The Builders would go on to become a seminal work in Masonic literature, touching the minds of innumerable Masons through the years. Newton was an aspirational writer, carrying in his words the vision of optimism so common to the 20th century. Indeed, the very name of the Scottish Rite Southern Jurisdiction's periodical itself, The New Age, hints at a sense of possibility for things ahead. The article we are looking at in this reprise is entitled The Patriarchs, and is taken from a speech given by Brother Newton at a banquet for aged Masons on October 12, 1914, in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and published in the December 1914 New Age. Here, Newton addresses the topics of age, aging, and the emergence of wisdom in the older Mason. Newton begins with a historical truism as to the reverence Masonry has for its senior brethren, but then comes swiftly to his main proposition: when a man is old, and what does age teach a man who is willing to use it to build wisdom? Using anecdotal and rhetorical examples from history, he expands deftly upon the notion that one is only as old as he feels, and two, how one uses life and the lessons time teaches determines not only the true age of a man, but the value of his life. The purpose of Newton's remarks is to extol the benefits of age. Newton writes in his article, "Youth seeks very high for what age finds nearby. It is when we grow older that the simple things of life begin to unfold their wonder and open long vistas of meditation. Youth knows more than old age because it knows so many things that are not so." Yet the author also devotes time to the notion of waste, specifically the waste of years that evidences itself in so many men who, despite having been presented with opportunities to learn and grow, cast such lessons to one side as if nothing has happened in their long lives that would teach them anything. Much has been said in recent years about generational issues in relation to Masonry, as Masons try to understand membership numbers in terms of generational appeal or the supposed lack thereof. Yet what Newton puts forth in his remarks to his audience in 1914 is that every stage of life has its advantages and disadvantages. Each individual must determine his course. He must choose to be receptive to the wisdom that time and experience can bring. And if a man is not willing to be open to that possibility, he may, even in his youth, be more prone to the infirmities of age than a brother in his closing years. A thought that arises in the mind of the present author is that new Masons are neither necessarily young nor old men. Newton's remarks, perhaps, speak to the way in which an older man may arguably bring a more receptive vessel to the craft, precisely because of what else is or may have been contained within this vessel over the length of his years before he knocked on the door of a lodge. The second emphasis of his remarks is, in some sense, a celebration of what aging means and the inevitable encroachment of that ultimate moment we must all face. Tellingly, Newton quotes Robert Browning's well-known poem, "Grow Old Along With Me," as a virtue as well as a blessing. And he ends his speech with a few stanzas from the poet and Mason Edwin Markham's The Homing Heart, each of which address death and the immortality of the soul respectively. In the examination of the latter poem, however, a couple of stanzas farther down, not quoted by Newton, catch one's eye. We will hear some word of the final meeting. As we meet at last by the love-loud trees, hushed with the wonder of life, and leaning over the marveling seas, strangely then will the heart be shaken, for something starry will touch the hour, and the mystic wind of the worlds will waken, steering the soul's tall flower. As stated earlier, Newton is delivering these thoughts only a few months after the beginning of World War I. A cataclysm that would steal the optimism away from previously hopeful generations who might have seen man as the measure of all things until both that creature and his measuring tools would prove to be deeply flawed. One who sees these comments in the context of history cannot escape the sense of foreboding that overhangs in the mind whilst reading the kinds of sentiments that call back to that which is romantic rather than what is reckoning in the human experience. The years immediately following these comments would call all interpretations of life into question and challenge the faith of men in search of either a better world or a better understanding of deity. We still, in this new century of our own, seek some word of final meaning, the steering of the soul's tall flower. Joseph Fort Newton's observations are a poignant appreciation of the wisdom accumulated with age, the ability afforded by age to appreciate life differently in light of the nuances time casts upon it. It is not so much that the mind changes in its capacity, although for so many that is but inevitable, nor that the heart reverses itself in its concern. Rather, it is that experience changes the nature of how things are understood, how one concerns oneself with a thing in itself. The message is at once truly Masonic, as well as deeply philosophical.
Like and share this article, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you wish to comment, please leave one, and as a reminder, hit the notifications bell. Any accompanying photographs or citations for this article can be found in the corresponding print edition. The Scottish Rite Journal is published by the Supreme Council of the Scottish Rite, Southern Jurisdiction, Mother Supreme Council of the World. Mark Dreisenstock, 33rd degree, Managing Editor. I'm your host, Matt Bowers.